Hello and welcome back to Parc Fermé Parlay with Kieran Downey. That was a race and a half, wasn't it? We are here after the Hungarian Grand Prix to go through everything that happened, and my God, there's quite a bit for us to talk about. After lap one, I thought we were going to be in for an incredibly boring race, to be honest with you, because not much was happening. But my God, the end of that race was something else. In fact, I would go as far as to say it was a complete shit show. A complete and utter shit show. That's the only way I can describe it, to be honest with you. It was one of the sassier Grand Prix we've had. The radio messages that were flying across were nothing short of an embarrassment. And in the end, it's just a shame that McLaren's 1-2 finish is going to be completely overshadowed by the complete mess that they made of the race. To be honest with you, there is nobody at fault here other than McLaren themselves. Not Lando, not Oscar, just McLaren. Absolutely shocking work from them, to be honest with you. However, we'll come into that a little bit later. We've got some other drivers to get into, so let's dive right in with the Haas boys, shall we? And Kevin Magnussen, who qualified 15th, finished 15th. Not really much to say about Kevin Magnussen, to be honest with you. He wasn't really there for any of it, really. He finished where he started. He couldn't defend against the Aston Martins. Just there. Did I expect maybe a little bit better from both these drivers? Yeah, I did, but it's a weird one. Hungarian Grand Prix is a weird one. I do expect them to maybe be finishing a bit higher, considering their run of form, but there's nothing to say about K-Mag. His teammate, Nico Hülkenberg, qualified 11th, finished 13th. I think Hülkenberg might have started on the softs, but he pitted incredibly early, and I think he was kind of just, everything was lost from there, to be honest with you. Similar to Magnussen, couldn't defend against anyone that was coming up behind him, really, and lost out positions. They just kind of had their heads down, they raced, they didn't do anything mental, there was no incidents, there was no bad pit stops, there was nothing, they were just there. Alright, now moving on to the Cybers and Zhou Guan Yu, who qualified 18th, finished 19th. I feel like I've said everything that actually needs to be said about Zhou Guan Yu. I went into this expecting maybe just a little bit more from Zhou Guan Yu, but then, I mean, it was practice that he was P5, so, I mean, his qualifying was poor and his race was obviously poor. It's not as if we had anything on last year to base it off. He finished 16th, I think, last year, but we also had 3 DNFs. So I've said it before, I'll say it again, this has to be Zhou Guan Yu's last year in F1. It has to be. Like, I understand Valtteri Bottas isn't exactly lighting up the timesheets and scoring loads of points. In fact, he also has 0 points. But he has track record. Zhou doesn't have that. So all that leads me to believe is that he's out. Moving on to his teammate, Valtteri Bottas, who qualified P12 and finished P16. Call me delusional, but I actually thought Valtteri Bottas might score a point this weekend. I genuinely did. I actually thought, this is it. Valtteri Bottas is getting a point. And especially when I was watching the race and he was in the points positions and I was like, could it happen? My God. To be fair, the car is doing a lot better with the upgrades they brought to it. You wouldn't think so in the hands of Zhou Guan Yu, but at the hands of Valtteri, he was doing some quite good stuff. He was managing to defend pretty decently against George Russell and sort of keeping behind him for a little bit, but just wasn't in the cards. We still have 11 more races, so maybe something. I really do pray that by the end of the year they've managed to score at least 1 point. You'd think so, right? They can't go a whole year without scoring points, can they? No. Nah, surely not. Come on, even just one. Well, anyway, moving on to Visa Cash App RB and Daniel Ricciardo, who qualified 9th, finished 12th. Kind of hoped for a bit better from Daniel. I won't lie to you. Here's the thing, right? And I'll say, in fact, actually for both drivers, let's put in Yuki Tsunoda as well. Yuki Tsunoda, who qualified 10th, finished 9th. Thankfully, Yuki scored a point. Perfect. What both of those boys need to be doing is working their asses off, because with all of this chat about Perez, they need to be maximising everything out of those cars. Now, I do understand that Daniel's race was lost through no fault of his own. They made pretty poor decisions with his strategy and cost him. So to be fair, where he's finished is probably not that bad, but just in the future, they're going to, if Perez is staying till the end of the year, they need to be making some big money moves, because I mean, I don't think Perez is going to stay to the end of the year. He can't. I mean, I know he got an all right result today, but surely he has to be out. One of those two drivers need to be there to pick it up. I've seen people say that, you know, Daniel Ricciardo would be a good fit to replace Perez if Perez gets the boot. He's an experienced driver. He's been in that team before. He understands how it works. He's driven alongside Max. He's not there to really challenge Max. I mean, let's be honest, I can't imagine Daniel Ricciardo is going to be challenging for a world championship anytime soon, but could be there to score solid points and actually play the role that Perez is supposed to play in helping Max by defending and helping the team and helping Max score those Constructors' Championship points, because that's what they're missing right now. They don't have a number 2 to help score championship points for the Constructors. We'll obviously come on to all of this in a minute when we talk about Red Bull, but do I think Daniel would be a good fit? Yeah, probably, but is it time to give somebody else a chance in that team? Like, is it time to give the Yuki Tsunodas or the Liam Lawsons the chance? I mean, Nico Rosberg said at the end of the race that he doesn't think that Red Bull should get rid of Checo because there is nobody to replace him. And on that, I kind of disagree. And I think that until somebody's put in that machinery and does a race in it, you're never going to know. It's fine to do these tests, but we don't know if Yuki would be better, or if Daniel would perform better, or if Liam Lawson would perform better. We don't know. I will say that I am split on Daniel. Part of me thinks that what's holding him back is the machinery. Part of me thinks what's holding him back is himself. We just have to wait and see, to be honest with you. But nice to see Yuki back in the points. Well done. All right, and moving on to Williams with Logan Sargeant, who qualified 14th, finished 17th. I didn't see Logan Sargeant once on that broadcast. Not once. In fact, the only time I think I seen him was maybe when he was getting lapped. Did he get lapped? Surely he got lapped. I think he did. I think it's the only time I've seen him, to be honest. So to be honest, there's not really much to say about Logan Sargeant, is there? I mean, there's never really much to say about him anyway. He's finished the race. Well done. All right, and moving on to his teammate Alex Albon, who qualified 13th, finished 14th. It was a great start from Alex Albon. He gained like 4 places at the race start and then just kind of fell away, and it is kind of Williams' fault. I think they started the race on a 2-stop strategy, changed to a 3-stop, and then I think changed back to a 2, or it could have been vice versa. I can't really remember which way they were going with the strategy. We're basically very indecisive, and Alex called them out over the radio. He's like, you guys are telling me to go with one strategy, I start going that strategy, and then you change it completely on me, and it's killing me out here. And he's quite right and fair to say that, to be honest. And they did kind of ruin his race. Not a great result for Albon, and hopefully he can bounce back next week. Moving on to another team that didn't have a great weekend, and Alpine. Pierre Gasly, who qualified P20, started from the pit lane and then did not finish. Pierre obviously qualified P20, got some engine updates to his power unit, and then had to start from the pit lane. He did a very good job of climbing. He was sitting in like the points positions, I think, at one point, but he started on a hard tyre, nursed that tyre through everyone else's pit stops, and then when it came for him to make a pit stop, he fell right the way back. Then a few laps into the race, was given the box, retire the car. Just another devastating, that's 2 weekends in a row they've DNF'd. 2 weekends in a row Gasly's DNF'd. This time was with a suspected hydraulic leak, I think it was. So not a great result for Pierre, and just a shame. Not much else to say about it really, it's just a shame, to be honest. He's a very good driver. He is a good driver. He's been stuck with a dustbin of a car for so much of a season. Finally gets a bit of a better car with upgrades that he can go racing and maybe secure some points, and now it's failing on him. His teammate Esteban Ocon, who qualified P19, finished P18. It's a terrible weekend from Esteban, isn't it? Just absolutely awful. I've not got much else to say about it. I expect actually a little bit more from the Alpines, to be honest with you right now. They don't have a terrible car. They just didn't have it this weekend. They didn't have any race pace. They didn't have anything. So I wonder what's happened there. It's quite an odd one, isn't it? But hopefully they can bounce back next weekend, to be honest. I have faith that they will be able to bounce back and start getting some points in the second half of the season. Now, Aston Martin, and we have Lance Stroll, who qualified 8th, finished 10th, and Fernando Alonso, who qualified 7th, finished 11th. It's good that they've scored a point with Lance Stroll, but they should be scoring more. I will say that. They should be scoring more points. That being said, it's good to see them not too far away from, like Alonso, not too far away from the points. He's been kind of floating about in the back for a bit too long, so it's nice to see him beginning to bounce back a little bit. But the car just isn't there for them this year. It's not there at all. There was a little bit of team orders that were played. Fernando Alonso was told to let Lance Stroll through so that Stroll could go and attack Tsunoda and try and make the pass there. He was told that if Stroll wasn't able to make the overtake stick with Tsunoda, that he would then give the place back to Alonso. Stroll just didn't give the place back to him. So can't imagine that will have pleased Alonso too much, but Alonso's just not happy at the moment. He's not content. He's not happy with that car. He's not enjoying it right now. So it's quite a shame, to be honest with you, but it is what it is. They just don't have that car this year, and they're just not performing great. So now on to two drivers that are performing great and did have a good weekend. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. And I'm going to sort of group them together because you can't really talk about one drive without talking about the other drive. Lando Norris qualified P1, finished P2, and Oscar Piastri, who qualified P2, finished P1. Now at the race start, Lando and Oscar both had fantastic getaways. Lando then went to cover off Oscar. Max came down the outside. They went into turn 1, 3 wide. Lando was caught in the middle of Max on the outside, Oscar on the inside. With Oscar on the inside, Lando had nowhere else to go, forced Max off the track. I'm saying it with quotations because it's not intentionally pushing him off the track. It was always going to happen. He had nowhere else to go. Thankfully, Max then did give the position back. He was told by GP, mate, you're going to have to, we're being investigated by the stewards. They are going to say you're either going to get a time penalty or we're going to be told to give the position back, so go and just give it back. Lando regained P2. Oscar was flying in P1. Absolutely flying. He was driving absolutely incredibly, just extending that lead just ever so slightly every single lap and managing his tyres perfectly. That is something that we don't see enough from Oscar Piastri, was him managing his tyres. It's not his strong suit, so it's nice to see that he is learning that and taking that on board and managing his tyres perfectly and extending the gap to Lando. So it made me kind of wonder whether Lando had an issue at the beginning of the race. We obviously know that he had an issue, I think, with his throttle at the beginning before the race started and the mechanics were working on it. And so I kind of wondered if maybe there was something there, but obviously he's finished the race, so I can't imagine there was. Then there was the radio call to Lando to tell him that his fight was with Verstappen, who was P3, not with Oscar in P1, which intrigued me because in my mind going into this, surely they would have wanted Lando to win. He is in the championship fight with Verstappen, so surely they would want him to be scoring as many points as possible because they do have the chance of a Constructors, but also a Drivers' Championship. We still have 11 races. Lando could win this championship. In my mind, I thought, you know, we're going to do a little bit of, let's get a McLaren 1-2, but maybe let's get Lando that win. Obviously, I also went into this really wanting Oscar to win his first race, and it is a shame that the way he has won this race has played out like this. They go through their pit stops. It's still a McLaren 1-2. Oscar's leading. Oscar then loses quite a few seconds. I think he lost like 2 seconds one lap, and I think it was because he was having to overtake like lap drivers. I think he was overtaking the back markers. So when Norris was told he was fighting Verstappen, I then thought, okay, bit odd. And then I kind of thought maybe it's because they've made an agreement between the team and the drivers that whoever leads this race on genuine overtaking, not through undercuts, overcuts or whatever, will be the one to finish ahead of the other driver. So if Lando manages to get ahead of Oscar through pure racing, then Lando will retain the lead of that race. Vice versa, like what happened with Oscar. Oscar managed to get ahead of Lando, so then that is Oscar's race to win. Then this is where McLaren lost their minds because their strategy calls were insane. They pitted Lando first, gave him the undercut so that when Oscar pitted, Lando was ahead of Oscar, and then pleaded with Lando over the radio to hand the position back, but in the most bizarre way ever. Now I understand that they pitted Lando to cover off the threat of Lewis Hamilton. I get that, sure. But why give him the undercut? If they wanted Oscar to lead and win this race, why didn't they just pit Oscar first? Like, I don't understand it. Surely they should have just pitted Oscar first, but no. They pitted Lando, gave him an undercut, and then had these mad radio messages, as I've said. They were just wild. So first of all, they tell Lando that once Oscar catches you, at your convenience, can you let Oscar past? And I understand they did that because they didn't want Lando to lose too much time, but Oscar wasn't going to catch Lando. Lando was faster. And then the radio messages just got more and more wild. Like, they were insane. They were giving him these mad radio messages under the pretense that he was taking too much out of his tyres, but they basically just wanted him to slow down so Oscar could catch up to him. We need you to save more tyres, please, and we want to let Oscar through. We think both cars are using too much of their tyres. Lando, we can't catch you up. You've proved your point. Just remember every single Sunday morning meeting we have. We know you'll do what's right. Lando, there's no threat behind. If there's a safety car, it's going to make this very awkward. At that point, obviously, he concedes and lets Oscar past. But at that point, the damage was already done. Now, in my mind, there's two sides to it. You cannot blame Lando for driving to win that race at all. That is just, no blame should be getting put on Lando. It would also be a shame if Oscar Piastri didn't win his first race due to McLaren giving his teammate the undercut. Like his own team giving his teammate an undercut on him. It would be a shame if he couldn't win. I understand both points. It's just poor pitwall decisions from McLaren, and they act as if they are a team that are not fighting for race wins and championship points. Like, they are in contention for a Constructors and Drivers' Championship, and they act as if they're fighting for like P5 and 6. As I said, if they didn't want Lando to lead that race, then they should never have given him the undercut. And it's just wild that they're now in this situation where, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, they got a 1-2. Oscar won his first race. But all people can talk about, and all people will talk about, is this absolute mess that McLaren themselves created. And what's even more worse is that if Lando had gone on and just won that race, he would have gotten so much hate for this. However, by Lando letting Oscar through, it'll then start all the, well, Verstappen would never have done that. Schumacher would never have done that. It's just an utter shit show from them. I don't know what is going on at McLaren, but they need to sort it out. Like, they need to just pull it together. Like, they have to get themselves together. And I actually feel bad for Lando being put in that position, and I feel bad for Oscar, because that boy's just won his first race and actually sounds genuinely sad when he was speaking over the radio. He sounds genuinely sad because his first race win, that he should be ecstatic and the celebrations and he should be so happy, and I don't doubt that he's not happy, but it's just marred by this utter shit show that McLaren have created. Everything that McLaren did was just bizarre. Their strategies, their communications, the fact that they are having these communications with Lando when everyone else can hear it. All the other teams can hear it. We at home can hear it. They played nearly every single one pretty much to us. Come on, like, surely there should have been a better way of communicating that to Lando. I mean, Nico Rosberg actually even said it to Andrea Stella. He was like, look, speaking from experience, mate, he's like, I've been there. Obviously with Lewis Hamilton. When you're telling me to concede a position for my teammate, when you're giving me team orders, don't say at my convenience, because it's never at my convenience to do that. I wanna win, so don't tell him, you know, at your convenience. Don't give him the choice. Just be direct with him. And Andrea Stella did say, I will take that on board because you are correct. And he is correct. In the end, McLaren screwed up the strategy. If they wanted Oscar to win, he should have been pitted first. After the pit stop, after those final pit stops, Lando was the quicker car, to be honest. Lando was the quicker car. It was clear that Oscar couldn't catch him. The communication from the team was absolutely appalling. However, in the end, Lando did do the right thing and let him through. Now, what can't happen is all the hate getting spewed towards Lando, because that's not fair. He is there to do a job, and his job is to race a car and score championship points and win races. And he could have done that today. He decided to play the team game and let his teammate pass. He shouldn't have been expected to slow down when he was the quicker car to let his slower teammate pass. At the end of the day, all of the blame lies on McLaren and the strategists and the pit wall. As I've said before, McLaren still handle themselves like the team that are fighting for P5, P6 in the Constructors' Championship, not a team that is fighting for P1 in both drivers and constructors. On a positive note, what I will say about Lando Norris, however harsh on himself, he handled himself very well in the post-race interviews and press conference. All right, now moving on to Ferrari, and we have Carlos Sainz, who qualified P4, finished P6. Decent race from Sainz, to be honest with you. Well done, solid points in the bag. Nice to see Ferrari not being woefully awful, especially with his teammate Charles Leclerc, who qualified P6, finished P4. It was a very strong start from Leclerc. He made up a good few positions. It was decent racing from both drivers. I actually thought Leclerc was going to be on for a podium because at one point he was setting fastest laps, and I was like, whoa! I thought we were going to be good, but I didn't think we were going to be podium good, but we weren't podium good, and he finished P4. Good race weekend from Ferrari, and now they just need to keep improving, please. Thank you very much. All right, now on to Mercedes, and George Russell, who qualified 17th, finished 8th. Absolutely brilliant racing from George to be able to get from P17 to P8. Very well done. Very reminiscent of Hungary last year, where he started towards the back and managed to get up into the points. So very good race from George Russell. Not much else to say about him. His teammate, however, Lewis Hamilton, who qualified 5th, finished 3rd. His 200th podium. Lewis Hamilton, the fucking GOAT. My God, that man is just, he just sets records after records. He's honestly such a brilliant driver. He did some fantastic defending against Max. I love watching them two fight because they're just such hard racers. It's a shame it ended the way it did. We'll come on to that in a minute. But, you know, he did some brilliant defending. He was absolutely not at fault for anything that happened with Max going into turn 1. A very well-deserved podium from Lewis, and just long may these continue. It's nice to see him happy because in his post-race interviews, I think he was with Rachel. I think he was with Rachel Brooks from Sky Sports. And she was like, you know, how do you feel? He's like, I feel happy. Like, I'm happy to be fighting. I'm happy to be getting podiums and fighting at the front of the grid and, you know, having a good car. He's like, I'm very, very happy. And I'm happy for you, Lewis. So, well done. Great weekend. Solid result. And moving on finally to the Red Bulls, who qualified P16, finished P7, and Max Verstappen, who qualified 3rd and finished 5th. Similar to George Russell, very good drive from Perez to be able to get up into the points positions in a weekend where he's crashed out and, you know, everybody's talking. It's good to see him scoring points, but I don't think it's still enough. You've still crashed out. You've still cost the team a load of money. Honestly, if you'd looked at the list of parts that they had to fix on Perez's car, you'd think they'd built him a whole new car. And it's amazing you scored some points and you only finished 2 positions behind your teammate. Well done, honey. But you were also 18 seconds behind that teammate. You know, you're in two minds about it because I fully believe that there will be something coming in the summer break that says Perez is out. But then Perez says, no, I have a contract. I will be here for the rest of this year and next year. But is that just the talk? Because you don't want to give anything away. Because obviously you wouldn't want to give anything away. And will it be that after Spa, which Helmut Marko has said, after Spa, they're all going to have a little chat and see where they go from here in regards to Checo. But they need to do something because him finishing P7 is not enough. I'm really sorry. We have Max, who is fighting for a Drivers' Championship. That's fine. That's on Max. But in terms of the constructors, Red Bull are a one-horse wagon, is that what it is? A one-man band? A one-man band. They're a one-man band when it comes to the Constructors' Championship. They only have Max that's really getting them any points. McLaren have 2. Ferrari have 2. Mercedes have 2. They have 2 drivers that are bagging good points. Perez is crashing and causing them money. They're going to lose the Constructors' Championship this year. McLaren are bagging very good points. And in the past few races, they have scored more Constructors' Championship points than Red Bull have because there's only Max fighting for them. There's only Max getting them in. And then moving on to Max. Max obviously had the incident with Lando and Oscar going into turn 1. He complained that he was pushed off the track. Babe, you were always going to go out there. Let's be honest. You were on the outside of a 3-car wide turn 1. You were always going to end up off the track, let's be honest. Thankfully, he did give the position back. There was a bit of a moment where he was complaining about the handling of the car. He wasn't comfortable at all, to be honest with you, and that showed through his radio messages. As I've said, he was fighting with Hamilton. I love watching these two fight. I just love it. It does give me flashbacks to 2021 and the trauma, but I do enjoy it. I do enjoy when two hard racers fight against one another. It's always good. It's always a good watch. He then obviously tried to move on Hamilton going into turn one, was carrying way too much speed and just locked up both his front tyres. His rear tyre hit Hamilton's front tyre, launched himself into the air, and thankfully there was no damage, it seemed. But he lost 2 positions, couldn't gain them back, and there we have it. He was then sent to the stewards for causing a collision, and halfway through the recording of this episode, it's come out that there's no further action. He's fine. What has been quite interesting to watch, as I said, was the radio messages, because my God, Mad Max is back. That man was not happy, and he was sassy feisty over the radio. GP was getting it tight from Max, but to be fair, GP can handle it, let's be honest. He was not happy from turn one with his radio messages. He thought he was pushed off the track. He was upset with his strategy. He was undercut, thinks his race was f***ed. Then unfortunately he did have that incident with Hamilton, and when he came over the radio to GP was like, I'm not having this argument over the radio, Max. It's with the stewards, we'll let the stewards do what they have to do. It's just childish having this over the radio and I'm just not doing it, which, to be fair enough to GP. However, I will say I'm just not on board with the Max and GP's radio chatter being disrespectful, that angle, to be honest with you. I just don't believe it. They've got a very transparent, 8-year strong, brotherly relationship. This race is nothing that they haven't dealt with before. They've been doing this for 8 years, back when Max was a lot more explosive than what he is right now. Giampiero completely understands Max way better than any of us can, and vice versa, Max understands GP. There will obviously be people that are on those radio calls that haven't really signed up for it. I'm thinking the strategists, I'm thinking even just the people that work for the team that are then going to hear these messages, that they're not going to be, you know, filled with great emotions by it. However, it's obviously just part of the parcel of working within an extreme high-intensity sport. I think if you were to also look at football, I think if you were to have radios on footballers, you would hear probably way worse than what we hear in an F1 race. We are, as fans, in a unique position that we get to hear radio messages between the drivers and the pit wall. And you don't get that in any other sport. So we are going to hear things that you wouldn't hear from footballers or rugby players or anyone like that, because they don't have this communication. They don't have radios. So it is what it is. And I don't think there was any disrespect meant from either of the two men, to be honest with you. I do think, however, that the extremity of Max's emotions are what cost him dearly today. They hurt his ability to perform at his best, and that kind of manic, aggressive, extreme emotion will never be productive. So, unfortunately, that's where it is. And there we have it, a pretty extreme Hungarian Grand Prix. There's going to be a lot over the next week up before Spa and even over the Spa weekend about Lando and Oscar, to be honest with you. And a lot of it will centre on Lando's driving. Lando, I imagine, is going to be getting quite a lot of hate, and I want to put it out there, I'm not here for it. The man is brutally honest, is very open with his emotions, and that invites people to be negative towards him, and there's just no place for it. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you've not got anything nice to say, just don't say anything at all. Zip it. And that is everything from us after the Hungarian Grand Prix. We will be back next week with Spa, one of my favourite tracks on the calendar. I cannot wait. And then it's the summer break, like 3.5 weeks off from Formula One. I don't know what I'm going to do myself, but that is a problem for after next week. So I will see you then. Have a lovely rest of your day. Love you. Bye.